Welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. I'm Joe Cook. I got Justin Wells to my left. I got Coach Williams, Charlie Williams to my right. It's another great edition of Recruiting Intel. This is a hugely important week for the Longhorns recruiting efforts, not just in the 2025 class, but in the 2026 class as well, as there will be a ton of prospects on campus this weekend for the Longhorns practice/scrimmage here on April 6th. Make sure you head to InsideTexas.com. You can find out all the information, all the visitors who will be there. We're only going to touch on a few of them, but the full and comprehensive list will be there throughout the week, not just today, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and any last minute updates on Saturday. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and Justin, Charlie, ready to talk a little bit about some the big recruits heading this way.
Always.
Yeah, buddy.
So
it's always recruiting at InsideTexas.com. That's how we party, Joe. You know that.
Exactly. It's a year-round thing. I guess from a high-level perspective, Coach, when you have prospects coming into town for a spring practice, you don't get to do this during training camp. You don't always get to really do this during the season. When you're showing off a practice to some high-level recruits, what are some of the key things that you want these high schoolers to take away from the experience?
Well, you spend all these months getting to know these kids and telling them how you coach and everything you do. Now it's time to put that on display and show these kids exactly how you coach. Right? You get to see the full-on display of me yelling, screaming, talking, teaching, the whole nine. So you can see exactly what you're going to get yourself into in a few months if you commit to us and sign. And you want to show if you're a quarterback, running back, receiver, you want to show that scheme of what you've been selling this kid on for months and months and months. If you're on defense, hey, we're going to play more man coverage. They come out to practice and see a lot of man coverage. It's like, yeah, this is where I want to be. So it's just a time for these coaches to really display all the things they've been telling these kids for months and months, trying to get them to come to Texas, and now you get to put that on full display.
And Justin, I feel like with you and Coach and even Eric Naleen talking to a lot of these kids, that's something that we hear more than almost anything. They want to see how I think with offensive line specifically, we hear so much about how prospects like John Mills, and though he's not coming on April 6th, Michael Fasusi and all these different guys, they talk about, I want to see how Coach Flood coaches me. And that just applies across the board, whether we're talking defensive back, running back, quarterback, or even kicker or punter.
Look, recruits, they go through the whole facilities and the campus, and they talk to the staff, and they meet and greet 100 people who they may not remember their names. That's the basic stuff. I don't think they necessarily care for that. You go into a practice, I think really gets their attention because one, they get to envision themselves there. They get to envision themselves being in that position group, being in that drill, getting coached by that guy. They get to see how the coaches interact with the players and vice versa, how the players interact with the coaches. To me, when players come and visit and they're not watching a game on a Saturday or they're not watching a practice, it's really a bunch of formalities and shaking hands and remembering names. And it really, I don't think recruits care honestly about as much of that as they do as seeing an actual practice. When they're down there in the field and they're getting to see those guys, talking to Kobe Sellers last week, like the practice was the highlight of his day because he got to see how Terry Joseph worked, but also he got to see Manny Muhammad on Isaiah Bond. He got to see, Matthew Golden going up against Terrence Brooks. And for a young prospect that's kind of trying to pick his way, seeing the people that could be ahead of you is so much more enticing than going through the facilities and shaking everybody's hand.
We talk a lot on Inside Texas, and we reiterate this point often about how recruits are not always swayed by the week to week results of games. Of course, it's a factor, but when you think about it, you're there 12. We look at 12 Saturdays, 13, 14 in the fall. These types of experiences show them what the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday most of the time is going to be like. And games are what decides, coaches' futures and things like that. But these are the moments that allow for coaches to show prospects what the daily life, what the majority of their time at a school would be like. But let's go ahead, quit talking about the high level stuff. Let's get into the nitty gritty and talk about some of the big names that will be there. Of course, we'll have a list that is constantly updated on Inside Texas. Rest assured that if anything big happens, these two guys are going to know the information. But let's talk about a recruitment that, Justin, you've been all over recently. That even though Dakorien Moore, I think number 3 recruit in the country, number 1 player in Texas, speedster on Duncanville's state championship football team and highly acclaimed track team, he's an LSU commit. They have a tremendous quarterback prospect. They've just had Jaden Daniels win the Heisman. He's going to go high in the draft, but he's still pledged to LSU. But Texas is one of 4 schools that Dakorien Moore is keeping an eye on, and he will be on the 40 acres this upcoming Saturday to check things out. What's the latest with the 5-star wide receiver in the Longhorns?
Yeah, I believe it was on Friday night. I got word that Dakorien Moore is going to be in Austin 3 times over the next 4 weeks. He ran in the Texas Relays last weekend. He's coming in for the spring scrimmage on Saturday, and then he'll be back for the spring game on April 20th. We posted that Saturday morning, and that took on a lot of buzz. Look, he's committed to LSU, and he's solid to LSU, but Texas is that one school that people feel like if he's going to flip, Texas would be the choice. And listen, there is a lot of confidence in the Texas locker room and in the coaching staff that there's people in that program that feel very good about Dakorien Moore. They're not pushing. They're just doing exactly what they do. You know how Sark likes to play the long game. I know the family really resonates with that. The mother was able to go over and speak to some of the coaches last weekend. That went over really well. I got to tell you, besides the fact that Texas is getting closer and closer to the number 1 receiver in the nation, I just like the updates because of the LSU On-3 board. Those guys go absolutely wild. I have some big fans on that website. They send me messages all the time. So I'm a fan of Billy Embody and Shea Dixon, what those guys do over there. But listen, Dakorien Moore back on campus is huge. Again, this recruitment is not really going to get kicked off till probably November, early December. So just sort of tread water. And if you're 38 special, just hold on loosely. This guy is a guy that you're going to just keep him in the midst. The fact that he's coming back to Austin, Colin Simmons is in his ear. He knows so many of these players in this program, and it's so close to home. LSU's got the number 1 recruiting class in the country, but I think Dakorien Moore, it's going to be his call at the end of the day. Getting him back on campus 2-3 times in the next month, that's huge, guys.
One of the other things with Dakorien is that I talked with KJ Lacey not too long ago at the Elite 11 camp, and he said something along the lines of Dakorien, he's in state. I don't think he's going to leave Texas. So, of course, that's KJ Lacey. He's a little bit biased, but a lot of bit biased, but he thinks that Texas has as strong a chance as anyone. It's Oregon and Ohio State, correct? Are the other 2 in the mix for Dakorien?
Oregon, Ohio State, yeah.
LSU, obviously.
Yeah, I think he'll take a few trips to Ohio. He'll take another trip to Ohio State for an official. Obviously, LSU. Those are kind of the schools you got to watch.
We will keep on going along, and this recruitment, of Jordon Davison has taken on a little bit of a new turn in recent days with some coaching changes at not just Ohio State, but Michigan and Oregon as well. And that's of Jordon Davison, a recruit out of Mater Dei High School, running back, one of Tashard Choice's top targets. And, you know, Coach, when you look at a coach going from Oregon, 1 finalist, 1 top group member, to Ohio State, another top group member, maybe the Longhorns' peak competition right now. When you're an assistant coach, like what is that change like to go from, hey, come to Oregon, to, hey, come to Columbus? Like, what are you doing there? Or are you just emphasizing the relationship? What does that look like?
Yeah, it depends on what kind of coach you are and type of person, right? If you're just really about the kid and building a relationship with that kid, I know you can't be open and honest to say, hey, I may be at this school next month, but you really want to build that relationship with them so that they get to know you and let them know, look, I can tell the kid, you got to do what's best for you at the end of the day, right? If you come here or if you go to another school, right? I want you to come play for me, right? I want you to play for me. But if you happen to go over here, I understand you got to do what's best for you. So you kind of already planted the seed because coaches never know if they're going to be at one school or the next school the next year. You never know. So you just want to build that relationship. But it can be tough if you're selling a program and all of a sudden you just leave and without having any kind of word, they don't really have the strongest relationship with you. You just been selling that school and not yourself. Then that kid may start to look around. So it just depends on what kind of relationship Jordan had with the coaches that were recruiting him at other schools.
Now, Justin, despite the Ohio State buzz, we know Tashard Choices has been a constant in this recruitment. And how does that have the Longhorns set up as we get to a very important juncture in this pursuit?
Yeah, I think Ohio State obviously made up a lot of ground in this recruitment. You know what? It almost has a Bijan Robinson recruiting vibe to me. You know, he didn't come to after the spring game. He wasn't in Austin for a while. He took some other trips, got a little wowed at some of these other places. But once he came back to visit Texas, everything seemed normal again. He felt like that was exactly where he was supposed to be. I think it could be similar with Davison. He hadn't been to Austin since January. He's going to come back. Once he gets back on campus, I think all those good vibes that he's built up for the last year with Coach Choice are going to come back. I really do. Now, how that plays out after the visit, that's where his decision's going to come. I think he's going to drop a top schools list here pretty quick. Texas is obviously going to be in the mix. I think it's going to come down to Texas and Ohio State, essentially. The Buckeyes have really asserted themselves in this recruitment. But let Davison get back to Austin. He's been there more than any other place. He's gotten as close to Tashard Choice as any other coach. Now, what happens after that, that's what we'll have to cover. That's what we'll have to see. But I think it'll even out a little bit more. I think you're going to see the sway come back just a little bit more because he has been so big on Texas for so long and so close to Choice. If there's one thing that might be held against Texas, it's the depth chart because they're constantly bringing in two guys a class, whereas Ohio State is having to go in the portal, whereas Michigan is losing one of their main guys. And so at the end of the day, Texas is going to have to probably fight off that depth chart battle. But listen, Davison has been building with this program for over a year. I think people are kind of ignoring that. And let's see what happens when it gets back to Austin. I think that's going to make a big difference. And I think that's where this recruitment might actually get started.
Before we keep going, let's get in a word from our friend Andre the Lawyer. Andre the Lawyer is a longtime Inside Texas user. His principal office is in Dallas, Texas, and he's been representing injured Longhorns throughout the state of Texas. Every client gets a personalized text message number so they can contact the team and get direct access to their lawyer all day and all night. Call Andre the Lawyer at 214-444-8808. Car wreck, 18-wheeler accident, slip and fall, on-the-job injury, wrongful death. Call 214-444-8808, 214-444-8808. We'll keep it going, and we'll go to the 2026 class. Texas has its 2025 quarterback commit in KJ Lacey. They're obviously going to have to fight off schools like Auburn, Ole Miss, and maybe even Oregon to keep him. But as of right now, Texas is the only place he's got an official visit scheduled to. He'll be on campus this upcoming weekend in the 2025 class. And so Texas can start to look at the 2026 class. They've only offered 3 quarterbacks, I believe. One has committed to Georgia. One is Raja Bell's son, Dia. And the other is Troy Huhn from out in California, who will be on campus. Justin, what do you know about Huhn and how A.J. Milwee and Steve Sarkisian are approaching this 2026 quarterback class?
I know if you get offered at quarterback by Texas, you're a big deal because they don't give out many of those. I got to be honest, I'm not overthinking this recruitment at all. I think this is Texas by a mile. This kid this kid was proactive in getting recruited by Texas, where that's kind of rare when you're a high 4 or 5-star type quarterback. Usually it's the other way around. Hume's the one that made the contact here early. He's the one that built the relationship. And look, you know what else looks good? Every place he's been tripping to is offering him. Ohio State, Michigan, everywhere I look at around the corner, he's getting another offer. And you would think, oh, that's just stacking him up. No, this kid is all Texas right now. I would be, at this stage, absolutely surprised if he doesn't wind up at Texas being the take. I know Sark and those guys are going to be a little bit more judicious. They're going to take their time and do some more evals. But between him, Curtis was never really realistic. I think Georgia was always going to be the case for the Tennessee kid. But Dia Bell, that's another one. And we don't know if this is going to be a 2-quarterback class, Joe. We don't know if this 2025 group might be as well. And I think that's going to have a determining factor on what happens. But at the end of the day, I would be shocked if Troy Huhn does not wind up at Texas.
Coach, what is the process of looking at current sophomores, junior to be quarterbacks look like, especially when you have, obviously it's going, when they show up on campus, Arch Manning's probably going to be the starting quarterback for a year, maybe two, probably just one at that 2026 point. So when you have that, and there's no real successor between someone like Trey Owens, who's going to have a good shot, someone like KJ Lacey, who's going to have a good shot. What type of pitch do you have when you're talking to these current sophomores, juniors to be?
Well, if I'm Coach Sark, you got a lot to sell, right? Every place he's been, from USC, you got Matt Castle drafted, who never played a game, right? So you can speak to your experience as a coach of what you've done and speak to your resume. I think these kids want to be developed. They want to play in the NFL. What other place would you go than Austin, Texas to play for Coach Sark? Honestly, you see what he did at Alabama from Matt Jones, from Jalen Hurts, Matt Jones, and Tua. So the track record is there of him developing quarterbacks, getting them to the next level. It wouldn't matter if you play a year or two. If you have a great 1 year, you can be drafted. So come be developed by the best there is in the business, if you ask me. And I think that's the selling pitch that you have.
One thing about Troy Huhn, for me, just kind of thinking out loud, there are some California super teams, and they put out some really good prospects. I mean, Bryce Young comes to mind. Matt Leinert's from that school as well. I don't think Mission Hills is thought to be some, superpower out in California. And yet here he is ranked on 3, ranks him as the number 52 overall prospect, number 5 quarterback in the country, number 6 in California. Sometimes not being on a super team, at least, especially when you're looking at a quarterback, I think there's an advantage to it a little bit. It's not a be all end all, but I like that. So maybe that's something to track and it also shows, I think, that AJ Milwee and Steve Sarkisian look anywhere for their quarterbacks. Not only are they looking at places like South Lake Carroll or Ohio State via the portal, but they'll look at Isidore Newman. And granted, that guy's last name was Manning, but that's not a big time powerhouse. So they'll look all over the place, and if they see what they like, most importantly, they will go after him. A lot to see, a lot to like from Zion Williams, big defensive lineman out of Lufkin, Texas. Justin, this is a recruitment that has some purple flavor, and not just because it's Lufkin purple, but some LSU purple. Some in-state schools are after him as well, but Texas has a very strong chance in getting him in front of Kenny Baker again, and the rest of the Longhorn defense, and Steve Sarkisian this week is going to be a big step in this recruitment.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about how important it would be for Zion Williams to come in April, because he'd already seen LSU twice in the last couple of months. And so when I caught up with him last week and he told me he was coming in, that's a big step. It doesn't seem like much, but that's a big step, because Kenny Baker and this guy need to get to know each other. Kenny Baker has some catching up to do, because Bo Davis knows Zion front and back, and Zion knows side to side. Like, they know each other. That this is a relationship-based type of recruitment. Zion is an incredible kid with an incredible personality, and you're going to have to get to know him. Now, Zion loves Sark, and he loves PK, and he loves kind of some of the other staffers that he's gotten to know at Texas. But Kenny Baker's going to be his coach. And so to me, him coming on campus might be as important as any other recruit that's going to be there on Saturday, because if Baker and Zion don't start, really getting together and connecting, I think he's going to LSU. I think they have a pretty large lead in that regard. But Texas came out first. They were early. He's always remembered that. He likes the idea of staying close to home. I know his family does as well. And so let's see Kenny work. Let's see what Coach Baker does with Zion. Get those guys on the same page. I think it's still going to take it into the summer. Zion still has one official visit. That's to Texas in late June. I think that's very big. Don't be surprised when he schedules a TCU official, a Texas A&M official, and an LSU official. But right now, Texas is the only one he has scheduled. The Horns are squarely in this, Joe. They just have a little bit of slack to catch up on since Bo Davis took his talents to Baton Rouge.
Coach, you talked a lot about checking out practice and that type of thing. Of course, this will be, I think, maybe one of the first times Zion Williams has checked out Kenny Baker at practice. And I'm not sure if you saw Steve Sarkisian, what he said on Tuesday, but he was asked about Kenny Baker and kind of the first returns. And one of the things he mentioned is that Kenny Baker works hard to develop the whole room. And if you want to read it a certain way, you could view that as a slight towards Texas' former defensive line coach. I don't think Sarkisian meant it that way, but I think he just meant it as a compliment to Baker. What if you're watching an assistant coach work and you see the walk-on defensive tackle getting coached the same as, a Tavondre Sweat type player, what does that tell you as a recruit?
Yeah, it lets me know that he's invested in making his room better. And that doesn't matter from first string to fifth string, right? He's here to develop you and make you better. As a player, that's what you want. I'm coming to your school because I want to be developed. And if I see this coach out here, I'm building a relationship with, and get to see him put in his work on the practice field, developing guys and how he talks to guys. That's where it gives me a true test of what I'm looking for as a player. And so I think that seeing Coach Baker on the field in action would do a lot when he comes to practice. He gets to see the guy and really would tell him a lot about who Coach Baker is just as a coach. And so it'll be huge when he shows up.
One more recruit to talk about, maybe one of the best overall football players, best overall athletes in the entire state of Texas. That's Jonah Williams out of Galveston Ball. Pretty much a 5-star by most accounts, including, I think, by On3. And Justin, this recruit went from one where, you do have a prediction in right now for Oklahoma to eventually land Williams, but we've heard more and more positive buzz since you've made that prediction about the Longhorns and Williams. How big will this be in this overall recruitment this weekend?
Yeah, you know what it proves? It proves the Texas coaches read our stuff. It proves the Texas coaches are paying attention to our RPMs, because when Justin Wells puts in an RPM, everybody stops. And they're like, wait a minute, if it's Oklahoma, we need some catching up. And what's funny is that's exactly what happened. Texas started catching up with Jonah. And the biggest sell there is baseball. Yeah, he's a football player, but I think he's a baseball player that plays football, to be totally honest with you. This kid is a diehard man on the diamond. His older brother, Nick Williams, was a standout baseball player, a rookie prospect with the Texas Rangers and the Philadelphia Phillies. Jonah's a lefty that can do so much on the field. And like you said, Joe, he's one of the best athletes in the country. Texas is back. Texas is in it. They're getting baseball involved. They're getting him solidified at safety. I don't know if you remember, but I think Choate was trying to get him in at linebacker. And Jonah wasn't really fond of that. He wasn't a big fan of that. And so it's funny how you put in an RPM and all of a sudden Texas gets up and gets a little jolt and starts putting into overdrive. But that's exactly, funny enough, joking aside, that's exactly what they did. And so give Blake Gideon some credit. I think he's built in some good inroads. But and Jonah's a guy, I don't think he's in any rush to make a decision. But ultimately, guys, this is going to come down to baseball. It really, really will. I know he'll be a football player on a football scholarship, but this is a baseball kid playing football, and I think that's going to be the biggest selling point.
And as we know for a while and have seen with anybody relate, like from Kyler Murray to another A&M quarterback, Cole Stewart, baseball can come in and take a prospect right off of your roster, your future roster, if the draft comes a call. And that seems like it's a possibility for Jonah at this point. Yes. With that type of pedigree. Charlie, how do you manage that? Like, do you just have to recruit until boom, he's in the minor leagues and you're left, just looking around? Like, how can you even manage that type of thing, especially when you're involving, say, your own college's baseball program?
Yeah, that can be tricky, right? Because Coach Pierce like, hey, I need him. Coach Sark's like, yo, I need him. And so like those guys got to work together with that, and especially with like spring and when baseball season is, when football season is, when he needs to be training with football, like it's a total difference. So I think those guys will do a good job kind of working together to do what's best for Jonah if you get him on campus. And I think one sport may weed the other one out. It could be like somebody comes calling the pros, he's going number 1 overall. Like, how do you turn that down, right? He can always go there and go play baseball and then maybe come back like Quan Cosby if it doesn't work out. Like, you have that option to come back and finish. So you have that. You can speak to Dion, right? He wouldn't play for the Yankees, while he's at Florida State, and then came back. He wasn't on a football scholarship anymore, but now I'm sure you can get paid because of NIL that you probably can still be on scholarship. I'm not sure how that works, but you can work things out to get the kid. And I think Texas will be willing to do that, I'm sure.
Remember what Ricky Williams did. Philadelphia Phillies. I know Joe was going to say it, and I just stole his role. Yeah, the Phillies paid for Ricky's scholarship. He was actually a walk-on that the Phillies paid for his scholarship, so he would play in the summertime. You can make it work, Jonah. You can make it work, Jonah. I promise.
If you go to our friends over at 5 Tool Baseball, our buddies Drew Bishop and Dustin McComas do a great job. He's a top 55 player in the state, and I don't have paid access. I'm assuming he's closer to 1 than he is to 55 in those rankings.
How do we not have a comp account to that? That's what I want to know. He'll watch this show, and he's going to remember. I'm going to get a phone call.
Hey, 5 Tool is unmatched when it comes to covering baseball prospects within the state. And again, he's close. He's in the top 55, and he's a lot closer to 1 than 55. A lot of great high school prospects heading to Austin this weekend. Make sure you head to InsideTexas.com for all the different information. You can get 1 month of access for $1. And if you do that now, that gets you through some transfer portal intel in addition to all the inside team info heading into the spring game. We know the Longhorns are going to see an active transfer portal both in and out in the upcoming window. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We will bring you a ton of great content this week and leading up to the spring game. Justin, Charlie, thank you so much. Thank you to our friend Andre the Lawyer. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com.